is we're going to do a College Rugby 102. So my goal with this is to kind of, ideally, if you already watched 101, you already have some, information about that, some kind of background and details. And this is kind of the next level. So I kind of want to make sure to get into some areas that like I commonly get a lot of questions about, that, you may have not already heard in another session. So again, my name is Karen Fong Donahue. I'm the owner and founder of the Runner's Edge. And before I kind of jump into some stuff, just some special thanks. Arbor Bridge is my preferred test prep company. So if you're looking for some test prep for your child, or if you're looking for, a team, they will set up an amazing program for you all. And also Akuma provides all of our cool gear and swag. So many, many thanks to them. All right, so a little bit about me, and obviously you all can read this. You can see this on my website as well. But really, with this slide, I want you all to know, I have a deep, deep tie to the, rugby community here in the US. So first as a player, then moving on into being a referee. And then obviously now my main role is mostly as an educator. So I do a lot of work around the country certifying referees. My family and I moved to Montana a little over a year ago, although I still work with families worldwide. So that's been one of the great things about my current job is that I can, work kind of really anywhere, which has been great. So working with students that are, overseas in Hong Kong or, the Philippines, and then also students that are, in California to New York to Wisconsin, everywhere and in between. So it's wonderful to just see how rugby has grown everywhere and continue to, grow college rugby. A little bit about what the Runner's Edge is and what we do. It's a college advising firm that's focused on rugby student athletes. So whether you're a parent, if you're an athlete, or you're a coach, this is what we do. Is we're here to offer, all that personalized advising, the group seminars, similar to what we're doing tonight. And then I also work with a lot of college programs and provide them with some consulting and offer them advice on how to connect with, students and teams and that sort of thing. So it's really kind of a little I call myself a little bit of a matchmaker sometimes of connecting those players with the programs and hoping we find a best fit between those two. So here's our agenda. So you can see we're going to do a little bit of an overview. We'll talk about a timeline. We'll talk about a recruit questionnaire, what a rugby resume should look like, and what I ideally would want to see on that resume, how to stand out at a camp or at a tournament, because those are becoming more and more important, and then how to avoid some common pitfalls that I see. So this slide is something that I update every single year because it is constantly changing. So if you know someone that's playing, college rugby, or if you're starting to look at it, it is going to look like a mess. And that is because it basically kind of is, right? So if you look at college rugby compared to, traditional sports, so like football or volleyball or track and field, those, programs have been around for a long time within the college landscape. It's much more established, makes a lot more sense. College rugby is still kind of coming into its own. So even from the time I was a player till now, it has gone through, leaps and bounds of changes and different conferences and different names and those sorts of things. So, the point of this slide is to point out, number one, the number that's at the bottom. So for the men, we have, almost 500 programs, and for the women, almost 400, right? So I think that's one of the main things I point out to student athletes is in the beginning when they're at least starting to get that inkling of, hey, I'm thinking about playing in college. The first thing I tell them is, absolutely, if you want to play in college, you can. There are so many different options to play that I want student athletes to know. They absolutely can. The next question then is going to be, well, how serious of a program do you want it to be? How much of your time and effort do you want to be putting into college rugby? Some want it to be, just kind of something fun. They're doing a couple days a week and they're playing on Saturday. That's great. All the way up to those who want that really professional atmosphere of training every single day, playing essentially year round if possible, really professionalizing that experience. So what you're going to see here is, and one of the things I like to define and just kind of explain, you are going to see there's a group, there's CRAA versus NCR. And then there's also on the women's side, there's also NYRA or NCAA programs. And really at this point, just for the purposes of, kind of when you're researching programs and trying to figure out what's a good fit, just know that there's two different programs. And it's a little bit like, or not programs, sorry, two different conferences or groups of teams, and these are the kind of governing bodies that are overseeing their championships. So the D1A men's CRAA was over the weekend. They had a playoff, right? So that's one thing that happened. But then NCR might be doing something totally different. So the reason I bring this up is, often I might have, a student athlete come in and they'll say, I want to play D1. Well, as you can see here, there's a variety of D1, right? So are we talking D1? Are we talking D1 AA? Are we talking NCR D1? Are we talking CRAD1? And it all kind of depends. And I find it really impossible just to pick a division and say that's where you're going to go. It's much easier if you're going to build your college list to really kind of take the rugby off the table and really start with, well, what kind of a college program are we looking for? And we'll get into that in a second. But I would really be looking at more things like, what are you looking for in a school, right? So, like the majors and the size, the location, the atmosphere. The rugby is going to come after that. So, we do want to make sure that the fit is correct. And then you can start seeing, where do those teams fall? Is it a women's NCRD2 or is it a women's CRAD2? Is there a big difference for you? And that's really up for, that student athlete to decide what is a good fit for them. As I mentioned, the women's, they're the only group in here that does have NCAA compliance and some kind of added things that go along with their recruitment that is different from the men. So if you start hearing things like the NCAA eligibility center or making sure that are a qualifier and those sorts of things, that is mostly if you're looking at an NCAA, maybe traditional sport. So I've had students that are going through, maybe a soccer recruitment as well as rugby. And you're going to find that, if you're on the women's side, if, you know, the team that they're looking for is not NCAA, but they're NCAA for soccer, they're going to be doing two different things. But again, if you're looking at one of these programs, you do have to follow their specific rules. If you're outside of these programs, you don't have to follow NCAA. So for the men, if you're looking at, a program and they're not NCAA, you actually don't have to fill out the eligibility center. They don't have all the recruiting calendars and the, kind of the quiet phases like where they can't contact you. They don't have any of that when it comes to any of the programs that are outside of these. The thing I'll point out here is every single year, it's exciting. We are adding more programs to this list. So I try to highlight the ones that are in the last recent year or two. So that's always something that's really exciting. If you want to see any updates, you can go to that naira.rugby website and they do update that. They've got a map. It's really wonderful. But definitely, explore these options if you are looking at an NCAA experience for a female athlete. Okay, so the first thing, so let's just say you're starting to think about this. The first thing I want you to think about is, what kind of a player are you? And I think this is, a time for a student athlete. And if you're a coach, really thinking through those players that you have. And getting a sense of, because I'll tell them, have you ever talked to your coach about this? Your high school coach, your club coach? Are you a local player? I'll explain what these are: a regional player, a national player, or an international player. So a local player to me is someone who is playing, just kind of as it would make sense, locally, right? They're just playing in their high school league and they're playing other local high schools, or they're playing for their club that's playing just kind of the local club scene. This is not good or bad, but it's just kind of showing that like this is kind of your experience level, right? You're just kind of playing in that community rugby space. That if you're, you're on the number one team in the local area, that's great. But the next step would be, depending on what kind of a program we're looking at, is they might actually be looking at something beyond just a local community player. We're looking for a regional player. And a regional player would be someone that is now taking part in, as you can imagine, more travel programs that are going to larger tournaments, right? So they're going to say national high school tournaments. They're going to say Tropical Sevens that just happened, North American Invitational. They're going to Nash Bash. They're going to some of these, bigger tournaments, and they're playing other teams in other regions, which helps if I'm a college coach. I don't necessarily want to see the best player coming out of just a state. I want to see how they compare to the best players coming out of Washington, coming out of Texas, coming out of Oklahoma, right? So like regional players are going to be again a step up. After that, you're going to then go to national players. Those are ones that are now playing on, again, bigger teams that are probably more in the elite bracket at some of these tournaments, not necessarily just going to the tournaments, but they're winning these tournaments. They're going to you know, the Great Northwest Challenge, which is here in Montana, and they are winning that boys elite U19, kind of bracket, right? So you're more kind of one of the another layer on top of local, regional, national. We're really there at the top. International is now you're playing, you're playing overseas. You're playing in the sevens tournament that is in Portugal. You're playing at the one that's in Germany. You are on the high school All-American program, right? So like you're playing other countries now, and we're starting to see how your talent compares to, again, other players, but not just within your community, not just in your region, not even nationally. Now we're looking at worldwide. Where do you compare? Once we kind of get a sense of what kind of a player you are, then we're kind of thinking, what kind of a program are you looking for? And this, I go more in depth in that College 101 webinar, like I was mentioning, but, are we looking at varsity programs? NCAA programs, high performance. I'm going to put all three of those kind of together because those are going to be the ones that are the most structured, the most serious, the most kind of expectations on those student athletes in terms of time. They're going to expect you to put in a lot of time to perform on the field. And then, you're going to have to really be a good time management person because you will also then still have to be successful in the classroom, right? Or are you looking for a competitive program? You want to compete, but maybe not at that, you know, 25, 30 hours a week kind of a program. And then third, maybe you're a player that, is new to the game, enjoys it, but isn't necessarily looking for that super serious experience. You might be really looking for more of a social, kind of, a program. And these are all things that you can start to find out as you start researching programs. Most of them on their websites, on their Instagrams, on their Facebooks, they will list things like how often are they practicing? When is their season? Do they have a preseason? Are they doing sevens and 15s? All of that kind of information, helps you as well as it helps me figure out do I think that's a top tier high performance program? Do I think that's kind of a social fun competitive program? Where does it fall? And then what we want to start doing is then we can start figuring out, well, what is going to be a good match for you? Are you a regional player that's looking for competitive? How do we match that? Are you a regional player that wants high performance? Are there things that we would recommend that you're doing now to get you to be seen from that kind of higher bracket kind of a program? Okay. Okay. So this is just, it's very general, but I do want families to understand, at a certain point, if you've got players that are in grades 9 and 10, right? So you got a player right now that is, at the end of ninth and 10th grade, and you're hearing about different people that are already starting to talk about recruitment and college and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to rugby recruitment, really nothing's going on. Okay. So take a deep breath. You're doing fine. Grades 9 and 10, all that's happening right now, I just want you to be exploring, right? So like at this point, a lot of it is kind of, taking rugby off the table. It's going to be exploration about, what kind of college are you looking for? What kind of major are you interested in? What kind of career are you thinking about? Like, taking local tours and seeing what different campuses are like, big schools versus small schools, urban schools versus more rural schools. Those are all the things I'd rather you be spending your time on versus like trying to reach out to coaches and talk to them. If you want to reach out to them, you can. If you're like, look, I happen to be, going on a vacation and we're going to be by this school and I would like to meet the coach. I'd like to see, where the team plays and practices. Absolutely, you can, but you just don't need to, right? Like there's no point for them right now to, for you to send film from grade 9. It just doesn't do anything. So really for grade 9 and 10, I'll tell a lot of families, like just take a deep breath. A lot of it is kind of gathering information and kind of making sure things are prepared for grade 11. As you can see, grade 11. So if you're at the end of grade 11, these things, hopefully have already been done or are kind of continuing to get done. If you're coming on the end of 10th grade, you are now kind of prepping for all of this stuff coming down the pike for you coming this fall. Okay. So let's pretend, let's say right now we're coming at the end of grade 10. This means starting in the fall, I want to do an initial contact, which I'm going to talk about in a second, which usually means it's a recruit form. And at this point, what we're talking about are varsity programs, NCAA programs, programs that can actually help with admission and or provide scholarship. Okay. Club programs can't do anything like that. So we're not really focusing on that right now. So we're really talking about true recruitment. Okay. So if we're talking about, um, like an Army, a West Point, a Belmont Abbey, a Queens, something like that. Those are varsity programs that are supported by the school. This would be the process for them. Okay. So we're going to do that initial contact, which is a recruit form. And then hopefully they're going to respond back to you. And really it means as we head into the winter and spring, it's continued contact. And as easy as that sounds, part of my job is always reminding students, hey, that coach emailed you back November 1st. Have you responded to them? It is now, November 20th. You need to be checking your emails and responding. If coaches are emailing you asking for information, you need to respond, right? So if you're like, oh, I went to New York Sevens, which is, always over the kind of the Thanksgiving week, beginning of December, you should be sending film from New York Sevens, right? So it should be continued contact. I would think from the fall, through the spring, anywhere from at minimum 4 to 6 contacts where you're sending something, you're responding to them, you're sending them updates on grades, test scores, film, anything like that. Okay, but continuing to check email, make sure you're pinging them and sending them that information. Okay, so sometimes, especially with a lot of these coaches, right? A lot of these programs do not have massive recruiting teams. It's really just them and maybe an assistant coach. They might have gotten your email and they're like, great, like Johnny sounds awesome. And then ding, 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 ding. 2 days later, you're at the bottom of their, kind of their inbox. So it makes sense for a month or two later for you to follow up and bring yourself back up to the top. Hey, this is Johnny. I wanted to make sure just to touch base again. I just got back from this tournament. Here's updated film. I'm still really interested in your program. I'm planning to come visit blank, blank, and blank, right? So the more you can kind of be that squeaky wheel and let them know you're still interested and updating them on things, the better off you will be. This summer, obviously, again, continued contact. Okay, I can't stress this enough, but you do want to make sure you are continuing to contact, and as well as obviously, if that school has a camp and you're interested in that school, you need to go. If there's tournaments you're going to in the summer, again, we're gathering film, we're also notifying those coaches, right? So if you're going to, um, one of the big summer tournaments, you are going to notify a coach. Dear Coach so and so, I will be at Great Northwest Challenge. I'll be playing on this team. We are playing on field 6 at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. If you're going to be there, I'd love to see you. Or, here's the link, it's going to be streaming, right? So the easier you can make it for them to see you and watch you play, I mean, of course they're going to make an effort, right? But if they have to hunt you down and figure out which team you're on and are you on, Atlantis Blue or are you on Atlantis Gold, right? Like give them all the details so they know where you are, what number you're wearing, all that kind of stuff. If we're now continuing with film, you want to be updating your film, right? And so what I would recommend for most students is they might create their own, private YouTube page where you're uploading, whether you have highlights or if you have just full game film that you can upload on there. But that way you can always send them the same link, right? So it could be YouTube, .com/, Karen, 27 or whatever that is. And every time I update with a new video, I just resend that link to them and say, hey, I have updated, there's new film on this link. Okay. As we head into the fall of grade 12, this is when we have applications. So recruitment doesn't happen or it's not finalized till you actually apply and you're accepted. Okay. So no matter what a college coach tells you, if they're like, oh my gosh, we want you to be part of the program, you still have to go through, all of the steps of applying. If there's an essay, if you have to send test scores, all of those pieces of the actual application still happen. So whether or not, you are being officially recruited, you still have to go through all of those steps. And then obviously then you would go through commitment. So in a perfect world, most students that are getting recruited, you are going to have most of this stuff done by November 1st. Okay. Obviously, some folks will commit later, some want to get through, regular decision, but, for a varsity program, most of the time, they want to kind of lock you down earlier in the fall so that they kind of know going in who is coming to them and who is not. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So we go back to in that timeline, we said one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to fill out a recruit form. So this is, for example, this is an example of what it looks like if we're looking at Queens, which is in Charlotte. So if we went to the sports page, if I just typed in Queens University Charlotte Athletics, this is the page that would come up, queensathletics.com. Okay. And then you would see a drop down under sports, and I could go to men's rugby or I could go to women's rugby. They have both. When I go to that page, what you would notice is on the far right, there would be a drop down and it would say prospective athlete form, recruit form, something like that. And this is what you'll end up seeing. All of the athlete forms are fairly similar, although the NCAA ones sometimes are a little more standardized. They might have similar things. But what I would recommend is, you want to fill out a lot of these, right? So especially if you're hoping for, say, like a scholarship offer or something like that, it's a bit of a numbers game. You want to fill out forms and get, kind of throw your name in the hat. But this is all where they're going to gather all your information. And prior to actually submitting, you might kind of scroll through and see what they ask for. So some schools are asking for things like basic stuff like your height, your weight, your positions, how, I don't know, like your 100-meter sprint speed, you have a max bench, max squat, things like that. If you don't have it, then maybe you wait on submitting, right? But at least now like, ooh, those are three things I got to make sure when I go to the weight room next, I have to get those. Or if let's say you're a sophomore, you're like, oh, I'm going to fill out this form in the fall. I have to prepare to fill that out in the next, 6 months, right? So going through an athlete form and making sure, all that information prior to submitting would be what I would recommend. Now, just kind of going through all of this, obviously it says like, just the areas that have an asterisk, those are the things that are required. But, if I were you, if you can fill out most of it, it is going to be helpful. This does not mean you're committing to this school. It doesn't mean you are recruited. This is like, think of you're filling out an application for a job. You're just raising your hand saying, I'm interested. And that's about it. The recruiting, pathway, this is step one out of many steps. The biggest mistake, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of it, but the biggest mistake I see is a student will fill out this form and they'll leave it and they'll say, great, I'm done. I'm going to get recruited now. And that's not the case, right? Or similarly, they might, put their stuff up on next phase and say, great, I'm done. Someone's going to come get me. The best results I have seen are students that are active in this process, filling out this form, and then going ahead and following up and emailing this coach a week later. Dear Coach so-and-so, my name is Karen. I just filled out the form last week. I'm very, very excited about the opportunity at Queens. I'm really interested in the psychology program. I have a friend that's playing there. I'd love a chance to chat with you, et cetera, right? And then if they email me back, again, I'm going to go ahead and ping pong that back and forth and build this relationship with the coach. Okay, so it starts with the form, but it doesn't end there. It is just kind of your starting point. So if it's a varsity program, you're going to start here, and then you're always going to follow up with an email to the coach. Okay. All right. After this, the other thing that I would recommend is making sure that you are attaching a rugby resume. So you can find this template on my website at ruggersedge.com. But the nice thing about having a resume is you can update it and you can send it along as needed. But a lot of times you are able to include information here that a recruit form doesn't include, right? So a couple things that I really like to include that maybe a recruit form doesn't ask for are, are there other sports you're playing? Have you won other awards in, not only athletics, but, maybe in your leadership? Are you the president of a certain club? Are you a National Honor Society member? Do you also volunteer? Do you do X, Y, and Z, right? So like the more we can include that information and kind of think of it like an advertisement, right? We're selling you. I am selling Susie Rugby to this college program, right? And when I look at this, I want to look at this and go, wow, like she has a 3.9 GPA, she's got a 4.22 weighted. All right, I'm already kind of excited because I'm thinking if I'm Karen University, I'm going to be able to easily get her through admissions, right? So if I want to recruit her, I need admissions to say thumbs up, right? So like some of these things, I want the education to be the first thing that's on there, not the athletics, because all the coaches need to know, can this person be admitted and will they be successful here, right? So we're looking at all those things as well as highlighting, all the different teams you play on. So again, if you are, you list your local team, your high school, your club, but then also if you're on a regional team, if you're on a national team, all that stuff, we want to include that. Also make sure that you're including your coach's information. So, for this example resume, I only have the one coach. If you've had multiple coaches, right? So if you have a coach that you have for, one sevens tournament, you had a coach because you went to a rugby camp, you can include them there as well, right? These are all people that can speak to your character, to your skills, all of that stuff, right? So, and again, this can be updated year to year. If you're a freshman or sophomore, this is a great time to start building this. And you can start seeing, oh, great, I need to make sure that I add that in. Oh, right, I just won that award. I was MVP of that tournament. I was the captain. Go ahead and add that in. You would be surprised how quickly, like, think you kind of forget things as you're going through, right? So I do want to make sure that that you have this in place to start kind of building it. Okay. Um, And Brad, I don't know if you can see if there's any questions. I don't know if you're able to see it or not.
Yeah,
But
I am.
oh,
I'm not seeing any yet.
perfect. Okay. So, I would say camps and tournaments are, in a perfect world, coaches want to see you in person, right? I mean, just like anything, right? Like I'm sure, I mean, I'm here on you with a webinar, but like, it's great when I get to meet people in person at a tournament, talk to them. I really get a sense of, players, right? When I'm at a tournament and I see them playing, it's still different than when I'm seeing them on film, right? So, if possible, if you are able to get to a camp or a tournament, that is ideal. Prior to going, we want you to communicate. So it all goes back to that communication piece. And again, it's from the students, not from the parents, not from the coaches. Okay. So I'm the player. I am Karen. I am the one emailing coach so and so, not my mom, not my dad. Right. So I'm going to communicate ahead of time. I am going to this tournament. I'm going to be at Great Northwest Challenge. I'm on this blue team, right? I hope I'm going to see you there. Will you be there? That kind of a thing, right? So communicate beforehand. Here is my resume. Here's an updated um, upcoming schedule for me in the summer, that kind of a thing, right? When you're on site. So now I'm walking around. I'm at Great Northwest Challenge. I see the coach that I've been emailing. I'm gonna walk up to her. I'm gonna say, hi, obviously hoping it's not like she's not in the middle of maybe watching a game, but I might say, my name's Karen. I've been emailing with you. I just want to make sure to introduce myself. I'm going to be over here at this tent. I'm playing in about 2 hours on field 12, right? Just as a note, if you are a girl and you're looking at an NCAA program and you're at a tournament and an NCAA coach is there, they're not actually allowed to talk to you till the end of the tournament. And you have to be of the age. You have to be a junior or higher. So if you are a freshman or sophomore at a tournament and an NCAA coach doesn't talk to you, don't take that personally. They actually can't. It goes against NCAA rules. Or if they're not talking to you during the tournament, same thing, right? They can talk to you at the very end. Okay. But introduce yourself. They're there to see you. You're there to see them. Kind of make yourself stand out. Be confident. Go up, shake their hand. Okay. When you're playing, show good character. Obviously, we want good skills, right? We want the running, the passing, the kicking, all of that kind of stuff, right? But we also want good character. I mean, when I'm a referee, if I'm on the sidelines, I notice the players that are supporting their teammates. I notice the ones that make a mistake and they just kind of pick themselves back up and they move on to the next play. Those are all types of things that every single coach wants, right? They want the players they can build on. Skills, can be taught, but that good character piece, like that is a piece that if you end up with a player that doesn't have good character, it can ruin your whole team, right? So like they're very, very cautious about recruiting players that are going to add to their team chemistry and not take that away. So, kind of, I tell players, any tournament you're at, or if you're at a camp, someone is watching. Be yourself, but be your best self, right? Be helpful, be kind, like all those things that we're going to expect from you. Like, if you're hoping for a recruitment spot, like you want to be, putting yourself, the best, kind of, I wouldn't say performance, but you want to be the best person you can when you're in these kind of situations because it is competitive now to get some of these spots. Okay. After the tournament, we want to communicate. So again, just got back from that tournament, had a great time, said bye to them, on the field. I'm going to email Coach so and so. Hi, this is Karen. It was so nice to meet you at the tournament. Um, just as a reminder, I was playing on Era Blue. I was number 12. Here's my resume again, and here's some links to our game. Right. So, like, it might seem like I've had a lot of players like, man, I'm emailing this person a lot, but you'd be surprised. It is so helpful to a coach if you're able to kind of beat them to the punch a little bit and send them the information without them having to chase you down for it. Okay. So just again, communicate, right? That was kind of how this slide started, and that's how it's going to end, is you got to make sure that we're staying on top of that. Okay. Um, Again, if there are coaches at your tournaments, or if you have not been able to get to a tournament or a camp or anything like that, we want to get some good film. And I have some resources at the end of some folks that can help you put this together. But if you're going to put together your own highlight film to kind of, again, get someone's interest, here are just some things that I would recommend, right? So for forwards, some things we really want to see. We want to see set pieces, right? We want to see scrums. We want to see lineouts. So we do, especially if you're a prop, if you're an 8-man, like we want to, and I don't want to just see the scrum and have it end. We want to see, is it an offensive scrum as you're put in? We want to see a defensive scrum. We want to see movement after. So I would start, for example, if we're looking at this scrum slide on the bottom, I would want to see, from put in to maybe like a phase or two after, right? Just so I can kind of see your movement. If you're this loose forward, if you're here at number 7, I want to see how you're getting across the field. I don't want to just see the scrum. Okay, so same with the lineouts, right? So I want to see maybe the receiver here a couple times. Are they catching it? Are they knocking it off the top? Like, are they going to maul? Like, the set pieces are really good to start with, and then at least have a few phases after. Of course, we want to see some offensive stuff. We want the running, the passing, the rucking. And how I would probably organize it is you can think as you're going through your film, your top 3 runs, your top 3 passes, top 3 rucks for offense. And then you could have another set for defense, right? Top 3 tackles, top 3 rucks, poaching, things like that, right? So you can kind of organize it with set pieces and then offense and then defense. And then if you have specialized skills, if you're a hooker and you're always throwing, if you want more video of you throwing, you can do that as well. Okay. Similar, obviously with backs, we still have a lot of that offense, the running, the passing, the kicking, the defense, the tackling, the rucking, right? But then also a little bit more specialized if you kick. So if you're kicking for touch, if you're in kickoffs, if you're kicking for points, those are all important. And as a scrum half, we do want to see you passing, obviously maybe off both sides, at the rucks, at the scrums, and then kicking and that kind of a thing. Okay. But we don't want a 30-minute highlight film, right? So what you might end up seeing is like, let's say you're a junior, it might end up saying like, uh, junior year fall 15s highlights. And then it might say like junior year, spring 7s highlights, something like that, or tropical 7 highlights and NAI highlights, right? You can break it up by tournament. But eventually, they might say, oh, that looked really, it's kind of like a trailer to a movie. Like, oh, this is exciting. Like, I want to see what Karen does. And then they might still want to see a full game. So that's why I think it's good. You can have the highlight film, but eventually they might still want to see a full game anyway, right? Because like I could edit a great film of me kicking. I'm not a kicker. And then they'll see me in a game like, oh, she really only kicks like once or twice. I just happen to put it in the film, right? Or in the highlight film. So, the highlight stuff is great to kind of get stuff going, but really they might end up wanting to see the full game too. Okay. So, some common pitfalls. So, we want to make sure that you are visiting these campuses. So, if I'm about to have a recruit call with Navy, for example, even if I couldn't get on the campus, I would do a virtual, campus tour. I want to at least see, get a sense of like what the school is about, right? Like, what does the campus look like? What are some classrooms? Like, do some research, right? Like, look on the website. Like, when I'm talking to the coach, when they say, why do you want to come here? I want to be able to say, oh, well, I haven't had a chance to come on the campus yet, but I took the virtual tour. I loved seeing what the dorms look like. I loved seeing this dining hall, and I loved seeing that I could study in that engineering library, right? So, like being able to show that you've done some research and you're really interested in the school is very helpful when you're talking to coaches. We already talked about the staying in regular contact, responding to messages, start keeping an eye on your social media. So there are more and more student athletes I've seen that might make their own, um, specific account just for their sport, which, question is always, do we have to have that? No, you actually don't. If you want to do it, if you want to manage that, great. But it's not something you have to do. But like start thinking through what you're posting online, especially if it's public, right? So I'm sure the students, if they're on here or parents, I'm sure you guys have had these conversations. But that stuff is out there and it could make or break whether or not there is an offer coming to you or not. So just start having those kind of thoughts of if this isn't something you'd want grandma or grandpa to see, probably should put it out there. Okay. And then last thing, not focusing on the schoolwork. If you're only thinking about rugby, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to study for my test because I have to go work out. Actually, the schoolwork and your academic performance, that's actually going to dictate more about the opportunities you have in college rugby than really the other way around. So really, really kind of understanding that the foundation, we can't even talk about rugby until we know that the academic piece is there. Okay. Some frequently asked questions. I just thought I'd throw this stuff in. Do athletes need to play on an all-star team? I would say no, you don't have to. However, if, for example, in your area you only have, let's say, a high school team, playing on an all-star team is just going to give you more opportunities to play, right? So more opportunities to play against, other teams, different styles. You get to show a little bit more about how you compete. So you don't have to, but it certainly can be helpful, especially if we're talking about recruitment, right? Like being able to show a variety and some growth of, this is how I play on my high school team. I'm at this position. And then when I play on this all-star team, I can play a different position or I can show some different skills. When is a good time to start with me? I would say, generally speaking, most families come to me ideally freshman or sophomore year, so we can kind of lay the groundwork and get some things going. But I would say the majority of families come to me in grade 11, just because you can see, grade 11 is kind of this really kind of critical time. Do I only work with rugby players? No, I actually just did a post earlier today. I would say, surprisingly, as long as I've been doing this, probably close to 50% of my students now are non-rugby or they're non-athletes because I do work with so many siblings and friends of rugby players and things like that. So I do work with other students. You don't have to be a rugby player for me to work with you because I also do all the things as going into the next question, helping students, kind of finding, that target college list, everything from working on applications and essays. Those are all things that I do as well. So it's not rugby specific, although that is obviously the area of expertise that I have. So just some resources here. So I do have a playbook. It's a guidebook, and you heard Brad mention it earlier. That is online. So you can purchase it, you can download it, or I can mail you a copy. I also really love the FIS Guide to Colleges. That's a great place to start, especially if you are in grades like 8 and 9. You're kind of like, kind of starting to think about colleges, not really sure. It's a great place to kind of start to think about different colleges and see how many colleges are really out there. That's always like mind blowing to me. Make sure you're doing some test prep. There's free test prep that is available. So ACT Academy, Khan Academy, those are all free things to do. If you're a junior heading into senior year, College Essay Guy is great. He offers lots of different videos online to kind of help with brainstorming and things like that. And then highlight film support. So ruckfilms.com or rugby reels. So Scott Murray is with Ruck Films, and then Craig Wilson is with Rugby Reels. Both those guys are great. They will help you if you have raw footage you want to send to them. They will help you put that together. And in the follow-up email, I'll send to Brad to send out to everyone. I'll make sure to include contact information as well. Make sure to connect with me. I have a monthly newsletter, we have a Facebook page, and then, let me help you, right? So there's a free 30-minute consultation. If you go to ruggersedge.com and just click on the book a consultation, we can always have a chat, learn a little bit more about your family, see where you're at, and then I can share a little more about what I do and see if it's a fit. And now we're on the last, that's my information there. So, just jot that down if you have questions. Just Karen at ruggersedge.com. There's my phone number, although I don't think anyone really calls me anymore. But that is my number if you need it.